Good morning, all of you. We will continue with the history chapter Nazism and the rise of Hitler. So, we started with the story of an 11-year-old German boy called Helmut, and while he was lying in bed, he overhears his parents discussing about something very seriously. What were his parents discussing? Yes, class 9.
About Alice.
About?
Alice.
Yes, before that, what he uh, hears his parents discussing. So, after hearing that, he refused to eat at his home. What did he hear?
Either his father would kill the family or he will commit suicide.
All right, so he overhears his parents talking that whether it is the right time to kill the entire family or the father he should commit suicide alone. And so later on, when he sees his father's bloody uniform being burnt in a family fireplace, and he was so traumatized by all that for the next 9 years he refused to eat at home. He was so afraid that even his mother might poison him, so he refused to eat at home. And then we studied that obviously Helmut at that time he did not realize that what it all meant, and his father, he had been a Nazi and also a supporter of Adolf Hitler. Okay, so, and we studied that Hitler's determination was to make Germany into a, yes, Hitler wanted to make Germany into a
Powerful country.
Power.
mighty power. All right, and he also had one more ambition. What was that ambition?
Conquering
Conquering
all
all
of
All right,
Europe.
conquering all of Europe, and and we also knew that he killed the Jews. But obviously, Nazism is not just one or two of these acts. It was basically a proper system, a structure of ideas as to how the world and politics should be based. And we started that. We will see that why Helmut's father he killed himself and why he was so afraid. So we also studied that Germany they had surrendered to the Allies. Why? Because and after they surrendered to the Allies, so now they knew what would come. So Hitler, his propaganda minister, and his entire family they committed suicide in the Berlin bunker. And at the end of the war, an international military tribunal it was sent up at which place? International military tribunal was set up at which place? Yes, international
Nuremberg.
Nuremberg. All right, and that was to prosecute the Nazi war criminals, those Nazi criminals, for the crimes that they had committed, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. And so we also studied that under the shadow of the Second World War, Germany on the other side they waged a genocidal war. What does genocidal war mean?
Killing of large of people.
Hmm.
Killing large scale.
Huh. Killing, but racial killing means killing people belonging to a particular race. Not killing everyone, but killing on the basis of race. So, racial killing or racial massacre. And we studied that how many people were killed under that, and when the penalty they got, obviously the penalty did come, but the punishment was far short of the crimes that they had committed. And now the allies they did not want it to be so harsh on defeated Germany as they had been after the First World War. So we just moved to see that what happened after the First World War. So Germany, a powerful empire in the early years of the 20th century, they also fought the First World War along with Austrian Empire and against the Allies, that is England, France, and Russia. And obviously later on the Allied powers they were also joined in by the US. So all of the people, these countries, they joined the war in the beginning very enthusiastically, and they all were like that, okay, we will make a quick gain. And from this, because quick gain meant you increase your territory and you get more wealth, more resources also. But they did not realize that this war, it will stretch on, and it will become a world war, and it will drain Europe of all its resources. So in the beginning, Germany, it made some gains and it occupied France and Belgium. But later on, the allies, obviously they were now strengthened by the US entry in 1917. So the allies, they won and they defeated Germany and the Central Powers in November 1918. So Imperial Germany was defeated, and the emperor, he abdicated, means he stepped down. So now there was an opportunity for the parliamentary parties in Germany to recast, means to re-establish the German politics. And so the National Assembly, they met at Weimar and they established a democratic constitution. So they formed a democratic constitution for the country with a federal structure. What is a federal structure? What is a federal structure? Federal form of government. Come on, class 9, don't tell me that you don't know what is a federal form of government. Seriously, no one knows what is a federal form of government?
Ma'am, government at more than one level.
Right, having a
Means
government
state,
at,
central
correct.
and ma'am, look.
Okay, so having a government at more than one level. So means you have a central government for the entire country and then different state or provincial governments. But in India, how many levels do we have?
Ma'am, three.
Three.
Ma'am, three.
Okay, what is the third level known as?
Ma'am, local.
Ma'am, local body.
Local
Municipality.
self-governing bodies, right? Okay. So deputies, means representatives, they were now elected to the German parliament, and the German parliament was called as Reichstag, and that was done on the basis of equal and universal votes cast by all adults including women. What do we call it in another term?
Universal adult franchise.
Right, universal adult franchise. So on the basis of universal adult franchise, deputies were elected to the Russian parliament. But this republic, it belonged to their own country, but it was not received well by its own people. Its own people did not receive it well. Why? Because of the terms of treaty that they were forced to accept after Germany's defeat at the end of the First World War. Now what happened, that at the time Germany was ruled by a king, an emperor. At that time they entered the war, but after they lost the war, so the emperor, he stepped down. All right, but now this new government was formed, and now this new government which was formed after the defeat in the First World War, now this government, because whichever government would be there, now they had to sign the peace treaty. And this peace treaty at Versailles, which was there with the allies, it was very harsh and humiliating peace treaty for the allies, for Germany. Now why? Because Germany lost its overseas colony. All right, so all its overseas colonies, at that time, these European superpowers, they had colonies in many places in the world. All right, so Germany, they lost its overseas colonies, and as a result of this war, a tenth of its population. Then not only colonies, overseas colonies it lost, but also 13% of its own territory Germany lost. Then 75% of its iron and 26% of its coal. You know how important these resources are. And so 75% of its iron and 26% of its coal, they lost to France, Poland, Denmark and Lithuania. Means that they had to give so much iron and coal to France, Poland, Denmark and Lithuania. And then the Allied powers, they demilitarized Germany. They demilitarized means they forced Germany to disband their military, means to not have a military. All right, so that now Germany would not be so powerful so as to again start any war. Okay, then the war guilt clause, they held that Germany, it was responsible for the war, and because they were the ones who started the war, and since they were the one responsible for the war, and so they will pay for the damages that the allied country they suffered. And so Germany was forced to pay a compensation amounting to see what is a figure mentioned.
6 billion euros.
Yes. So, 6 billion. Now, that is a very, very huge amount. And the Allied armies, they also, and not only this they lost, and not only they had to pay compensation, but on top of that, the Allied armies, they lost so much. But at least they could have, their condition, they could have survived if, they could have worked on their resources. But their resource rich Rhineland, now that was also occupied by the Allied armies for much of 1920s. So that is what they reduced Germany to after the First World War, and that is what was mentioned there, that they did not want it to be as harsh on Germany as they had been after the First World War. So obviously we can see that they had been really very harsh on Germany after the First World War, and many people they think that Nazi Germany was born because of these harsh terms of treaty which were given to Germany after the First World War. Okay, and many Germans they thought, they held that this new Weimar Republic, it was responsible not only for the defeat at war but also the disgrace at Versailles. Obviously, now they had been defeated, they had to sign this peace treaty in which they lost everything, and so you need an excuse, you need someone to blame, and now the emperor was not there. The one who really made Germany enter into this war, he was not there. Now this new government was there, so now this new government was made responsible. Now the people said that no, it is because of this government that we lost the war. Obviously we all know that this government was not in existence when they were fighting the war, because after the war was over, then the emperor he stepped down. So though this government was not there, but it was held responsible not only for the defeat at war but also at the disgrace at Versailles, means that they were the ones who signed this treaty. So the people, the means Germans, they did not like this Weimar Republic. Okay, the effects of the war. Now this war had a very devastating impact on the entire continent. Now, here we are not only talking about any war, we are talking about a world war, and any war, they have so much impact on any country, and this war had such devastating effect on the entire continent, not only financially but also psychologically. And Europe, earlier it was a continent of creditors, means they gave money, but after the war Europe, it turned into one of debtors. Earlier they were the ones who lended money, and now they had to take money. And unfortunately, the infant Weimar Republic was made to pay for the sins of the old empire, and it was unfortunate for the Weimar Republic. Why Weimar Republic is called infant? Because this republic was just being born in Russia. Earlier it was Imperial Germany, it was ruled by a king. Now first time they had this democracy there, and so this democracy was just infant, it was just being born there. And so this infant Weimar Republic, now it was made to pay for the sins of the old empire, means the sins which Germany, the old empire under the rule of emperor, whatever sins they have committed, now this Weimar Republic was made to pay for the sins. And so this republic, they carried the burden of war guilt and national humiliation. So now this Weimar Republic, now on them was placed the burden of war guilt, that you were the people who initiated the war. So war guilt, then national humiliation, they were humiliated also, and because of the terms of treaty that they were made to sign, and then they were also financially crippled, means financially also, they were not able to do anything. All the finances, the resources, everything was, so many resources were taken away, and then they were financially also crippled by being forced to pay compensation. They had to pay so much compensation. Their 75% of its iron, 26% of its coal. Then they also had to pay such a huge amount as compensation. Then the allied armies occupying their resource rich Rhineland. And so this republic, it carried the burden of it all. And so anyone who supported the Weimar Republic, so those in Germany at that time, those who supported the Weimar Republic, so Weimar Republic, it was supported by the socialists, Catholics and Democrats. Now people, they attacked them also. So people started attacking those groups, those who supported Weimar Republic, and they were mockingly or insultingly called as the November criminals. Why November criminals? Because the peace treaty at Versailles, it was signed in November, so they were insultingly, mockingly called as the November criminals. And this mindset means this mindset, that the Weimar Republic, they were the ones, and they were responsible for the defeat in the war, and also the disgrace and everything. And so this mindset, this has a major impact on what happened in Germany in early 1930 in their politics, and that we will see soon. Okay, so the First World War, it left a deep imprint on European society and polity. So this First World War, it left a deep imprint not only on European society but also politics. Again, like this is World War, and so many things changes after war. You lose so many people, you lose so many resources, and then after that, if you are made to sign such a treaty, then you are losing so many resources, and we can understand that what would be the condition of Germany at this time. And so not only society but also on politics, so a deep imprint was left on European society and politics. And as a result of this war, now soldiers were given more importance. Soldiers came to be placed above civilians. Soldiers were given more importance as compared to civilians. And politicians and people who speak in public, they laid so much stress for men to be aggressive and strong and masculine. Why? Because they wanted men to stand up for Germany, to fight for Germany. And the media, they also glorified, they wrote about the trench life, means the military, about the army in such glorious terms and all that. But the truth was very different. The truth really was that the soldiers, they lived very miserable life in these trenches. You know what are trenches? Yes, class? Do you know what are trenches? You must have seen some war films.
Yes, mom.
Yes, beta? They dig trenches in the ground, and so they hide themselves in the trench, and then they put their gun on top, and then from there they shoot at their enemy. So that is called as a trench. And so the media, they glorified that life is so glorious, but the truth was very different. Why the truth was different? That the soldiers, they were trapped with rats feeding on corpses. Now you are there fighting the enemy, all right, from both sides fighting is going on. So obviously soldiers are killed on both the sides. So on your side also soldiers are being killed, so dead bodies are there, and you are fighting, and at the same time rats are there feeding on corpses, on dead bodies. And and then you face poisonous gases and the shelling of the enemy, the firing of the enemy, and you see that your people, they are reducing, they are dying. So obviously it is not a very glorious life. It means but basically what they are trying to say is that the soldiers, for them the life is really miserable. They live very hard life, they live very hard lives. That is what they really want to say. But at this time the politician and publicists, they laid so much stress on all this, and their media also glorified this life also. Why? Because they wanted people to be inspired to join army or to stand up for the country, and so aggressive war propaganda and national honor occupied center stage in public sphere. And so now about war, and that how glorious is the war, and that when you fight for your country, you lay down your life for the country, so it is an honor. So they talked about this in public, and so popular support at this time, support grew for conservative dictatorship that has recently come into being. And at this time, some support also started to grow for conservative dictatorship. You know what is dictatorship? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So now support grew for dictatorship, and this idea also just has recently come into being in Germany. So in this type of situation, democracy was a young and fragile idea, and it was not able to survive the instability of interwar Europe. Means Europe was fighting among itself only, and so democracy in Germany, it was a very young and fragile, means which can be broken easily. So it was a young and fragile idea which could not survive the instabilities of Europe at that time. Okay, so for today we'll stop here. That is all the time we have. Have all of you understood what we have done today?
Yes, ma'am.
Clear to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.